Say, while the choir is taking seats, why don't you please stand up and say good morning to the people right around you? Will you do that? Just take a moment to do that. Joan, good morning. Hi, Betty. Well, on a long road trip, an elderly couple stopped at a roadside cafe for lunch and enjoyed their lunch. Everything went along very well. And after the meal, they got back out in the car and got back on the highway and made their way on down the road. And about 20 miles down the road, the wife realized she forgot her glasses on the table back at the restaurant. And she told her husband they have to go back to get her glasses. And he got so irate and turned into such a grouchy old husband and just let her know what an inconvenience that was. And on top of that, they're on the interstate highway. They had to travel 10 more miles before they found an exit to turn around and go back. And it took so long. And he just fussed and complained the whole way. They finally got back to the restaurant, found a parking spot, and he's just fuming. And his wife is so embarrassed and exasperated and says, "Honey, I'm so sorry," and gets out of the car and goes in. And he rolls down the window and says, "Well, while you're in there, you might as well get my hat and credit card too." So traveling can be quite an experience, all the adventure that we have along the way. And Abraham is no exception. He has lots of adventure. The Lord calls him, and the first thing Abraham does is start traveling. Everything's just fine and dandy in Haran, but God says, "I've got plans at another place. And I need for you to have enough faith to go to this other place." Well, Abraham's story starts out here in the book of Genesis, at the beginning of the Bible, chapter 12, and picking up at verse 1. It'll be up on the walls. We'd like for you to read along, and you'll also find it in your bulletin. And if you brought your Bible today, remember, after the service, go over here in the fellowship hall, hold it up, and they'll give you first place to get cookies. How about that? So please do that. Take advantage of that opportunity. Well, reading from God's Word. Now the Lord had said to Abram, and by the way, Abraham, that was his name before. Later his name gets changed to Abraham. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, from your people, your father's household, to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. And he took his wife Sarah, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. And Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Moreh at Shechem, and at that time the Canaanites were in the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he went on toward the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent. And with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east, there he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. And then Abram set out and continued toward the Negev. And may God add power to the reading of this word and in this story, that it truly might inspire our own faith. God has plans for this man, has plans for the earth, has plans for humanity. He's tried to put things together, and it's not too long before this event we find the story of Noah. where God's on the verge of just giving up on the whole thing. But Noah is faithful along with his family, and now we come to the story of Abram. And God has a very determined, a very persistent plan. Indeed, he calls upon Abram and said, I am going to do a great thing through you. Everybody on this whole planet is going to be blessed through you. Anyone who blesses you, I'll bless them. Anybody who curses you, I will curse them. Isn't that good? It's not like you got a big guy standing up for you there. In case any bullies come along, he'll be standing up and providing for you. And so Abraham does the most unique thing. He gets up. He gets out of his comfort zone. Can you believe this story? Gets out of his easy chair, if you will, and says, okay, I'll do it. I'll follow after your way. And Abraham gets up and he goes. Takes his wife with him, his nephew, and some of the possessions they have and livestock, and begin to make their way out. And did you notice that interesting little note in verse 4? Abraham was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. 75. That's just when he gets started. All this time, God's been waiting until Abraham was ready. And then he calls him when he's 75 years old. Now we'll get started. God does that often with his people. Moses, when he's called, he's 80 years old. God figures, well, maybe they're old enough now, they're grown up enough now, they can be effective in what they're doing. Never give up on yourself and the plans that God has and how he might be able to use you. We're always effective if we've got a heart of faith. Well, Abraham goes. He goes west. He obeys. He follows after God's ways. And he finally gets there to the promised land. And you know what he finds when he gets to the promised land? Nothing. It's just a lot of mountains. There's no Walmart. There's no restaurant. There's no grocery stores. There's just nothing. Abraham arrives and begins traveling around the country to make the very most of this. And it's so ironic that Abraham is not going to know this yet until centuries later. This is the only land in all of the Middle East that doesn't have oil under the ground. Isn't that all the more ironic of all the other lands that could have been selected? But God has special plans, and this particular land of Palestine, what will later be called Palestine, is part of that plan. And Abraham is responding to it. It's his faith that makes all the difference. To be able to arrive at this mountainous region and not to see nothing, but to arrive with great hope, with great anticipation. In the book of Hebrews in chapter 11, much is written about Abraham, the model of faith. For Abraham it is true. Now faith is being sure of what we hope for, certain of what we do not see. Abraham arrived and found nothing. Do you suppose he was disappointed? Do you suppose he was irate? Do you suppose he began to panic and say, it's all lost, I left everything from Haran, and now I truly have lost everything because there's nothing here? His faith is what made the difference. His faith is what gave him the power to prevail. And that is what is a model for each and every one of us. Even when there's nothing here, Abraham can see the potential. He's got that stamina inside of him. He's got that strong courage, that strong ability to stand up, even in the midst of adversity. Stamina, strength, courage, conviction. These are great gifts. And when God's people have these kind of gifts, these kind of characteristics, they can do remarkable things. It's part of our American heritage. December 7, 1941. That date is ringing a bell, I'm sure. Hundreds of planes attacked the U.S. Navy. Devastating losses. 8 battleships were lost. 330 aircraft were lost. 3,600 dead or wounded. That was at Pearl Harbor. What did Americans do? What did the president do? What did FDR do? He got on the radio and said, hey, this is terrible. We just better give up now. Is that what he said? He said, we've been attacked. It's time for the American people to stand up and start using this backbone back here and start getting firm about it and start finding the gifts that matter of courage, find our strength, find our conviction, find our stamina, and we shall rise up and we shall take care of this problem. It was so inspiring. And when the call was there, the American people had that ability to stand up and deal with the situation. The saying is so true. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Right. I forget that sometimes. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. What do the wimpy people do? I've never heard anybody answer that one. The wimpy people just give up. So this is too hard. Let's just go back home and forget about it. Everything is lost. There's no use to it. That's cowardice. But the strong people can prevail and can overcome. I enjoy studying about World War II and that history and the battles and what made all the difference. And I found a number of authors kept coming back to this one point. How did America win the war? They said it was the American ingenuity. That American ingenuity, that's what did it. The Nazi war machine had incredible tanks. These Panzer tanks and the Tiger tanks. The American tanks would shoot them and the shells would actually bounce off. They had that much metal on them. But the one weakness about a Panzer, they broke down a lot. On the battlefield, their motors, their engines would just die out on them. And the one thing that the German soldiers did not have was any mechanical ability. When those Panzers broke down, crews got out of the tank and hitchhiked back to Munich. Get us out of here. But the American tanks, when they broke down, soldiers got out of the tank and they'd start looking at it and they'd say, anybody got chewing gum? I think I got some chewing gum. I bet I could fix this. Anybody got some duct tape? I think duct tape, we could get this. And they knew how to fix their tanks. They didn't abandon them. That was American ingenuity. They knew how to rise back up again. And when adversity hit them, it was just a momentary hesitation, so to speak, just a pause in things. But they found a way to get going again. That's faith. That's faith to be able to do that. Faith that we can work our way through this. And it's courage. And that's what God's people need. That kind of faith, that kind of courage to not give up, to never give up, to stay the course and to stay consistent and to work hard, all for the sake of Christ's church. In our church here, we're going to have Back to Church Sunday. Carol, October 6th, right? Just a few weeks away. It's our opportunity to show some of that, to start inviting our friends and say, we need you to come on to church with me Sunday. It's time to get our lives back straight with God and get things reordered once again. It's time for our church to say, I'm not giving up. I'm not just going to roll over and let whatever happens. I'm going to have some courage. I'm going to step up and deal with this. I'm going to invite people to our church. I'm going to get involved. I'm going to show some of that American ingenuity, some of that courage, some of that stamina, some of that backbone to stand up and make a difference. That's the nature of faith. That's what Abraham expressed. Some years back, there was a great TV program, one of those few programs I got addicted to for a while, Northern Exposure. Any Northern Exposure fans? Probably got a few here. They ran their course, fascinating few seasons, and it's a fascinating plot line. Little Sicily, Alaska, just a little place way up in Alaska. Zach, where'd Zach go? Did you visit Sicily when you were there? Zach and Bees just took a cruise up to Alaska. But in this little town, there's a man there by the name of Maurice. And he's tricked this medical student, Dr. Joel Fleischman. And they have sponsored him through medical school. And in the contract they set up, they had this little clause that's very easy to overlook, that when Dr. Joel Fleischman finishes his work in school, that he will come to Sicily, Alaska to do his residency. So Joel has to come to Alaska, and he finds out the stipulation that he's got to stay. Maurice has built it up, like Sicily's a great place. And when Joel arrives, he discovers there's 3 small, dirty streets and 1 general store, and that's about it. And when Maurice is talking to Joel, and Joel is complaining that this isn't anything of what you said, this isn't anything like that. And Maurice is shocked. And he says, look, son, can't you see it? There's a Burger King right over there. Do you see it? It's going to be there in just a little while. And then right down that street, there's a Walmart that's going in. And you go to that Walmart, you go around the corner, there's a florist right over there. And Maurice begins painting the picture of what Sicily is going to be. Maurice is so much like Abraham to be able to look around and say, this place is going to be something someday. This place is going to be important. And when Abraham walks around this country, he doesn't find anything in particular, but his faith is strong enough. He stops at one place, builds an altar, and he says, this is going to remind us that God is here and God is faithful. God's going to do something. He moves to another place at Shechem, builds another altar. Says, this is the reminder that God is working, God is active, God is going to do something. We need those little reminders for building up our faith. We do that with the comfort crosses we use during our services of healing. When you come down for prayer, we're going to get one of these into your hands, and just that opportunity to remember about God's faithfulness. How many people have a comfort cross? We've given away dozens of them to people in time of need, and they're available for any. There's nothing that's magical about the wood, mind you, but it's that reminder. It's that encouragement for our faith that we don't give up so quick, that we stay the course. It's like it says in Hebrews. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. That's such a bold statement right there. If you don't have faith, there is no way that you can please God. If you come before God and just say, Lord, there's just no way to it. It's not worth it. It doesn't mean anything. There's no way God is ever going to be impressed. God is impressed with people like Abraham that says, Lord, not much here yet, but it will be, and I'm ready for it. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. For whoever would approach him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. Strong hearts, strong spirits, strong faith. That's what makes all the difference with our Lord God. In the scriptures, there's so much spoken about faith. In 2 Corinthians, the righteous shall walk by faith, not by sight. Again in 2 Corinthians, because we look not at what can be seen, but at what cannot be seen. For what can be seen is temporary, and what cannot be seen is eternal. When we have our faith set upon God, there's adventure. There's that opening for miraculous things to happen in our life. There's the excitement. There's the joy. There's for a broad, wide open future for everyone who will engage life with faith and not doubting. Jesus calls disciples. Jesus still has a call for each and every one of us to follow after him, to follow his ways. I've got an adventure for you is the invitation that Jesus has for all of us. Leave all the things that are so cumbersome to you, all those things that hold you down, and rise up to a new adventure, a new life that is prepared for all who have enough courage to have their faith lead them on.